Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy Cline. I work on the Fedora project at Red Hat, and I'm going to talk about keeping your distribution up to date using tools like Anitya and Librariesio. So all distributions probably suffer from this problem. There's a lot of packages and not a lot of packagers, and packaging is pretty time consuming. Maybe some of the projects will have mailing lists, and the packagers will be on those mailing lists, and they'll see new releases, but it's a lot of work, and some people maintain hundreds of packages. So it would be really great if we could automate this. So I'm going to cover Librariesio and Anitya, basically what they are, what you can do with them. I'm going to go into a little detail about how Fedora uses it, and how a different distribution could use it, and then maybe some other ideas that Fedora is not doing right now, but could be done, possibly. All right, so Librariesio monitors 2.5 million projects across 30 package managers, so like PyPy or RubyGems.org or Cargo for Rust packages, that kind of thing. It has very detailed project reports. They do more than just find new releases. They do, it'll tell you, for example, what license the project is and all its contributors. And it's a pretty neat dashboard just to discover projects. It has a REST API you can use, as well as a server-sent event stream, so you can get kind of semi-live updates about what's happening. And it's open source. I think it's a Ruby project, but it's pretty cool. And then there's Anitya, which it's a little confusing. It runs under releasemonitoring.org, but the project's called Anitya. And it was started, I don't know if it was started before or after Librariesio, but there is a lot of overlap in terms of features. It tracks about 15,000 to 16,000 projects versus 2.5 million. But it also maps these projects from their upstream name to the downstream package names. So for example, there's a popular Python library called requests. In Fedora, it's called Python-requests. In other distributions, it's probably called something else. They're mostly consistent, but the names can vary. And this is really nice for distributions to use because Librariesio will announce that a project had a release, but you don't know what it's called in the distribution. So it can be hard to automate events around that. So another thing it does is we'll scrape any web page you point it at. So if your project does, tarball dumps on FTP, it can still handle finding updates for that, whereas Librariesio only uses package managers. But other than that, it's not as good as Librariesio about finding packages in package managers. So it also sends real-time notifications using 0MQ, and it has a basic REST API, which could use a good bit of work, so pull requests welcome there. In Fedora, we only use releasemonitoring.org at the moment, but we're working on integrating the Librariesio server-sent event stream, and that will hopefully speed up a lot of announcements for new versions and generally be more reliable. So what happens is when releasemonitoring.org finds a new release, it sends a message, and then we have a little service that listens for these messages and attempts to automatically build the new version in Koji, build service. And then it will file a bug against that project because it knows the mapping between the upstream project and the downstream package. So it'll file a bug against the package and attach the results of the build. So it's pretty basic, but it does, it can be pretty helpful. And actually, I think I have a long list of just, this is kind of what happens. It'll file bugs, and you can. This is the last week or so. So it gets pretty busy, and all these bugs presumably help maintainers keep track of all these packages. Some other things you could do with these tools, and I'm going to do a demo at the end. But Librariesio has, like I said earlier, it knows about licenses. So you could use it to detect license changes. So when a license change happens, you need to make sure that it still falls within the acceptable licenses for the distribution. Fedora has a big list. You need to announce that to the development email list. And it can be difficult to remember to check every release for a new license. And so that could be automated to help packagers. Another thing you could do would be like generate packaging files for new projects. If you have some sort of automated tool that takes Ruby gems and spits out a spec file, for example, you could automate that, presumably based on these messages. Librariesio knows about dependencies. So you could detect new dependencies for a package when it gets updated and file a bug or something to tell packagers that it's not going to be very easy to update this and you're going to have to do some packaging work. So those are just some ideas. We don't do any of those things in Fedora right now, but it could be pretty cool to do, potentially. So this is, to summarize, I would use librariesio for anything where you don't need to know the distribution name, the package name, or if it's all package registry stuff. But Anitya will do tarball dumps on FTP servers or whatever weird setup you have, and it knows about downstream packaging names. They both send notifications, so you can do a lot of reactions to these notifications and whatever you could possibly want to do on a project update, it lets you do. So I'm going to try to do a demo. I have no idea how I'm doing on time. I'm probably going very fast. So actually, before I do the demo, I did want to show you guys. This is what Librariesio looks like. It knows about the release. It has all the dependent repositories, its dependencies, lots of just general usage, contributors. So it's pretty nice, but releasemonitor.org is not quite as pretty. I don't do UI, so, but it also has these distribution mappings. So you can see Fedora Python requests, Gen 2 dev Python requests, and all that. Let's see here. All right, so I'm going to use the REST API to create a project. Actually, I guess maybe we want to look at these scripts first. All right, so I'm going to create a project. It has a pretty simple REST API. And I don't know if you guys can even really see this. But it's pretty straightforward to use with any tool that can use HTTP. That's not very exciting. And then the next thing, this is, we use something called fed message. It's 0MQ based in Fedora. It sends these JSON messages out. So what we've been doing fairly recently, actually, is we will subscribe to the server-sent events that Librariesio sends out, and then send them out as fed messages. So if you prefer to use that, it's available. So this is kind of what a message looks like. It has a repository and description and all that. So I'm just going to send that message to a socket. And then the last bit here is we're going to listen on that socket to see what messages get sent out by Anitya and that last script we looked at. Okay, let's see here. So this is just going to listen for messages and print it out. And the next thing I'm going to do is create a project. So it creates a project. We created 2 mappings. I'm going to call the Fedora mapping Python Anitya and the Debian mapping Anitya. I don't think it's packaged for either distribution, but I'm making some data up here. So we can go, there we go, back here and search for the project. And this is the project we just added. So you can see it doesn't know about any versions. It's got those 2 mappings I talked about, and just some basic information about it. So the next thing I'm going to do is send a message. And this is exactly what libraries.io would send out, but I didn't want to rely on the network. So that sent a message out. You can see we found a new release, and it knows about the mapping name. So if you were listening to these messages, you could, file a bug or make a pull request or do something based on that. And if I go back here and refresh the page, I got a new version. Not terribly exciting, but so you can see here. These are all the messages we got. So the first message is when we added a new project. Anitya makes announcements about a whole bunch of stuff. And these are all topic-based. I'm not going to go into too much detail about 0MQ. But you can react to new projects being added. You can then see down here, this was the message we faked out and sent. And then based on that, Anitya it verified the new version, added it, and sent out another message. So one thing to note that I didn't bring up earlier, Librariesio feed is over HTTP at the moment. So you don't really want to trust it without verifying that the update really did occur. So Anitya does that. So you can trust those messages at least if you verify the signature on those messages. Let's see here. And that's kind of it message-wise. So I guess that was kind of the demo. I'm running fast here, so maybe people will get some time back. But do we have any questions, I guess? Yeah.
So you have something that is like running live, right? For this Anitya.
The question was, is there something running live for this? The answer is sadly not yet. All the code is written, and I really wanted to get it deployed to production before this. Unfortunately, the infrastructure admins were pretty busy for the beginning of January, which was sad, but I didn't want to have a meltdown about it. Yeah. So not yet, but I do hope in the next month or so all this stuff will be in prod. So, other questions? Yeah. Okay. So the question was, systemd isn't on libraries.io. How would one add it? I don't know off the top of my head how systemd makes its releases, if it's just Git tags. And it's not in a package manager. Libraries.io can't do that. Now that could be a cool feature to add to libraries.io, and if we did that, one thing I've thought about is maybe trying to get all the stuff that Anitya does into libraries.io, and then getting rid of Anitya. But for now, you could only do that in Anitya. So, other questions? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so Anitya can do that as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't use the API right now, but there's an open pull request to change it to that. I just haven't finished it, and the original contributor has not been around. But I guess a good demo here, I think systemd is probably in release monitoring. So you can see here, it does know about systemd. I don't know if 2.36 is the last release. Could be, so. I think you could. Oh, yeah, that's a whole other thing. Because GitHub probably rate limits us right now and we're not using the API, not every scan works out. So it's probably got like a 503 response or something. So actually, let's see here. I think I can edit this. It wants me to log in. But yeah, so you can use GitHub as a backend, or PyPy, or RubyGems, or any number of other things. It's just not quite as efficient because it only scans twice a day. So Librariesio would be more responsive. So any other questions? Yeah.
We used to have automation, so when we had a new package, like it would just, this would happen. And it seems like we've lost that in the last few months. Do you know if there's any, what it would take to get that back?
Yeah, so the question was, and this is Fedora specific, but there used to be automation in place so that when a new package arrived, all these mappings would be created automatically and people would get notifications and it all just worked. And that went away recently. There's not a lot of work that would need to be done to get that back, but I have not done it. It was in the new hotness, so you would just need another event listener for the message. And it kind of guessed at mappings as well, or it guessed at how to create the project. So one thing we could do is create projects based on libraries.io messages, and then they would probably all exist in here already, except for things like systemd, where it's just get tags. But yeah, that would be good to bring back, and it would be nice if somebody did that work.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be me, but yeah. So other questions? All right, cool. Well, I think that's about all I got. So that was a short talk, but yeah, thank you.